Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast, and welcome to our spoiler-free review for The Man from Toronto. Hello, I'm JLaw, but you can call me Justin, and this is our spoiler-free review for The Man from Toronto. Special thanks, as always, to our friends at Netflix Canada for giving us this opportunity to see the movie early for review. Before we get started, if you're joining us for the first time, well, we are Geekcentric, a podcast covering the world of movies, TV shows, toys, collectibles, gaming, and all things geek-centric. Joining me for today's spoiler-free review is the man from Halifax, Mr. Nate Shelton. How are you, sir?
Jeez. I was gonna. Well, now that I'm from Halifax, I guess I'm not allowed to do that anymore. But I'm doing good. Yeah, I had this movie's fun. I had a fun time.
It was a thing we watched for sure.
Yeah.
100%. Well, before we run out of toner, let's get everyone up to speed on The Man from Toronto. A case of mistaken identity arises after a screw-up sales consultant and the world's deadliest assassin, known only as The Man from Toronto, run into each other at a holiday rental. This movie stars Kevin Hart, Woody Harrelson, Kaley Cuoco, Jasmine Mathews, Lela Loren, Pierson Fode, Jencarlos, Canela, and Barkin. I apologize if I've mispronounced anyone's name. The movie is directed by Patrick Hughes and based on a story by Robbie Fox and Chris Bremner. The Man from Toronto is a Netflix film launching globally on Friday, June 24th, 2022. So, Nate, let's not waste any time. Let's do this. This sort of feels like a bit of a rinse and repeat, in my opinion. If I'm gonna, right? Like,
for sure. Of a lot of movies, for sure.
But specifically of movies with Kevin Hart, though, too. I'm very specific on that. Like, we think of something like Central Intelligence, which stars him and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson,
right?
Ride Along. I just feel like we're seeing Kevin Hart kind of again repeat the past roles that he's played, where he's sort of a bumbling fool that gets thrown into a world that he knows nothing about.
Yeah, it gave me similar vibes to movies that I honestly think are better than this one, of like Rush Hour, very much Rush Hour feels, the Three Amigos. Sometimes there's some Austin Powers kind of, sort of where the main character is sort of mistaken for someone else kind of humor. And I you know what, it's not like Kevin Hart in the movie is there's some funny Kevin Hart moments. It's very Kevin Hart to kind of give a description for anyone who has seen any of those movies before. I do like some of the jokes that are at his expense as well, trying to there's a moment where they like immediately rip on his height by having him try to sell like an adjustable pull-up bar. Because he's a salesman. He's a failing salesman, in the movie, and yeah, you know what? I think it's a fun sort of popcorn afternoon movie, which we'll expound upon a little bit here. But one thing I have to just quickly say and get it right off my chest, right off the bat, I'm very disappointed in Woody Harrelson. Not with his performance so much, but just in that he's supposed to be the man from Toronto. But he keeps saying the man from Toronto. And anyone from Toronto who's lived or been near Toronto knows that it's not Toronto, it's Toronto. And the fact that he keeps saying Toronto just kept pulling me out of it. I was so disappointed by that. Well, it's like, did he not do his homework, or did no one do their homework on this?
Well, this was kind of my issue with the movie. Don't get me wrong. Like you said, Woody Harrelson, absolutely fantastic actor. I like the pairing of Kevin Hart with Woody Harrelson. I think that's very interesting. Yeah. But I would have casted someone who was from Toronto.
Yeah.
For all intents and purposes.
Why not?
I actually would have chosen someone that was either Canadian or from Toronto. One of those two things. It's a bit of a missed opportunity. But again, that being said, there was something interesting that drew me into this whole wanting to watch this movie was, you got Kevin Hart and you have Woody Harrelson, right? And with Kevin Hart, you're going to get that typical, as we said right off the top, that typical Kevin Hart comedy. With Woody Harrelson, he kind of like goes back and forth. So it was interesting to see him, the two of them kind of play off of each other in this movie.
Yeah, I did think that we were going to get a little bit more than the sort of one note. I mean, Woody Harrelson plays, a master torture artist, or he's kind of like an assassin kind of thing, and so I thought he definitely nailed that. I did think there's a certain point in the movie. Obviously, we aren't going to go into spoilers, but there's a certain point in the movie where I thought the movie was going to take like sort of this interesting twist, and it's during a dating scene is all I'm gonna say, and I thought we were gonna go in a different direction genre wise, at least for a little bit longer than they did, and I would have loved to see that, because I think Woody Harrelson in those moments, that's where his character started to really sort of flourish into something that was more than this sort of one note very dark character. And I think, again, I bring up Rush Hour, and you see over the course of just even that first movie, those two characters sort of learn from each other and sort of grow in different ways. And we do get that a little bit with Teddy Jackson, with Kevin Hart's character, but not as much with the Man from Toronto, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that to both of the characters, of Teddy and the Man from Toronto, they feel very one note, like they have the character that they're supposed to portray in this movie. I will say, though, that Patrick Hughes directing this movie is a very interesting choice. He's done movies like The Hitman's Bodyguard, The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard, Expendables 3.
Yeah.
So there is some interesting action that takes place towards the end of this movie that I think is actually shot fairly well. It felt very articulated and very choreographed in a way that actually the last bit was fairly enjoyable.
I really did enjoy that last 30 minutes of the movie. In terms of that action scene, I felt like it elevated up to the level of action that I would have kind of liked to see throughout the entire movie.
Exactly.
I felt like, and again, I get it, like you want your sort of big bombastic sort of ending, and that's totally fair, but I just felt like, watching it, I was like, oh, okay, now we're getting to the John Wick stuff. Like, now we're getting to that level of sort of action. And I just feel like, again, if that's your strongest, foot forward, then play that up a little bit more, because I felt like, all throughout the movie, we were kind of just waiting to get something like that. And I do feel like they could have done it they could have dispersed that a little bit throughout, or sooner, or as I said before, during a really wonderful date scene, go in that direction, like completely shift our mindset of what the movie is. But that's I think my biggest problem with the movie is it's exactly what you think it is without even seeing a trailer. If I just said Kevin Hart, Woody Harrelson action comedy, this is it. This is what you're going to get, and again, for better or for worse, that's what the movie is. I think again, if you're interested in the plot, I think the storyline, it's just kind of a really silly premise, and their justification throughout the plot as it gets deeper and deeper really doesn't make any sense. Really is, you gotta like really suspend your disbelief, which again, for an action comedy movie with Kevin Hart, it's fine.
You're already
you can
doing
do
that. Yeah.
But it's just that the movie, until that last 30-minute action sequence, I just wasn't really surprised by anything. I was kind of just like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Okay, here we go. And it just kind of kept going along. Thankfully, the movie doesn't necessarily, it's not too long. I don't think it's, what is it about?
It's longer.
Is it?
Longer. It's under 2 hours. But
yeah.
I honestly believe, though, as what you're describing, this is very cookie cutter. This feels very familiar to other movies that we have with hints and maybe sparks of potentially feeling a little different, but never, ever leaning so far. And on those notes alone, this movie feels longer than it really should be. There's some lingering moments and some confusion towards the end. And the action, if there was more of that action that we were talking about at the end that was interjected throughout the movie, then I probably would have been more okay with the runtime. But because not much really happens, it does feel really long, and things do pick up towards the end. But yeah, it's under 2 hours. It doesn't overstay its welcome. I get that, like in a runtime, but it feels longer because there's just not much going on, right? Like,
yeah, and it kind of does feel like there are definitely moments as I was watching it where I was just like, okay, like this is a bit padded out. I think there's some sort of tasks or sort of things that they have to go do, and they don't really give too many reasons as to like why they have to go do it. Yeah. Again, the whole thing just sort of even like the whole reasoning as to like the mission that they're on really isn't explained beyond just a couple lines of dialogue, and it never got me super invested. And again, I think besides that 30-minute action sequence, again, I keep bringing it up, but that date scene was the most I was invested in. I was like, let's go. I want to see this character in a different light than I've seen him throughout the entire movie with Woody Harrelson's Man from Toronto, and it just never happened. I don't know. It's fine. It's fine.
It's fine. Yeah, I think, again, as you're saying, on paper, this reads very typical. It plays very typical to that, to what you're expecting based on just who's starring in this movie.
There is one more thing that I did want to just quickly mention. And I understand, because you were like, I think you asked me before we recorded this, or before you watched it, where you were like, is there a lot of Toronto in it? And I was like, honestly, I think there's like a one skyline moment where we see the CN Tower for like literally half a second, and sure. And then I thought maybe a little bit of it was filmed somewhere in was it in Hamilton or something, or Milton, Ontario, which is cool, but they're just like, I get it, it's not called The Man in Toronto, but I just, with the word Toronto in a blockbuster feature, I kind of feel like people are expecting a little bit more of that representation. They're expecting not a movie with Woody Harrelson that goes all over the world and we see different parts of Toronto filmed to look like Washington, D.C. I would have loved for them to like base it in Canada. I think that would have been really, really cool to actually get to see, these places explored as Toronto. Toronto never gets to play itself in a movie. It always has to play somewhere else. And when you've got a character that's literally called the man, when the movie is literally called The Man from Toronto, maybe it's a little bit wrong for me to look at it this way, but I just thought it kind of wanted a little more Toronto than we got.
I think you nailed it though. It's The Man from Toronto. It's not The Man in Toronto.
I know.
But that being said, yes, there was a large part of this movie that was shot in Toronto. There is a museum in Toronto called the Aga Khan Museum, which is just on the way entering into the city. It's beautiful. It's made of like almost like a white tile. That was featured in this movie as a Washington building, and much of Toronto's landscape is featured in this movie as Washington, and I use air quotes around it because if you're from Toronto, you'll recognize the highways and all that. But the reality is that like it's The Man from Toronto, and I would have thought that we could have seen a little bit more of Toronto and like the streets of Toronto and actually have it be Toronto, almost like how we got a lot of Toronto in Turning Red.
Right, which is based in Toronto, right? Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's based in Toronto, and his home base, like Woody Harrelson's The Man from Toronto's home base is in Toronto, so that is the skyline.
Yeah, but we
shot
get to see to see a skyline for half a second that probably wasn't actually like a real skyline shot, and then we get an inside of his like Airbnb. It's honestly, it's not, it's nothing. It's nothing. It's so like, again, I don't think that should necessarily dox the movie too much, but it's just one of those things where I was just like, like you have such an opportunity there, and it just, I don't know. As a Canadian critic, I would have loved to have seen a little more. Toronto.
Sure. I think though too. I think again, back to my note about maybe actually casting someone from Toronto, a Toronto actor, or Patrick Hughes has worked with Ryan Reynolds. He's Canadian, Do you know what I mean?
Oh, okay.
Why not put
Yeah.
him in? Why not put him opposite Kevin Hart? That would have been really interesting.
That would have been interesting. Yeah.
That would have been interesting. They both would have been very typical in their typecast roles, but at least in that sense, you're leaning into it. And I guess, you know, Woody Harrelson has to be more of the straight guy, while, you know, Kevin Hart is the comedy, so you can't really have the two competing. But look at how The Hitman's Bodyguard turned out, with Samuel L. Jackson and Ryan Reynolds really kind of acting off of one another. One's more intense than the other, but they still lean into their typecasted roles. I have no problem with Kevin Hart being Kevin Hart or Woody Harrelson being Woody Harrelson. It's just make the story interesting, make it at least more enjoyable, because a lot of this just felt very rinse and repeat for me. So I think with that, we have gone from Toronto and back. Let us wrap this up with our final thoughts and our rating, which will be out of 1 to 5 men from Toronto. Nate.
All right. Again, it's a fun popcorn movie to pop on if you don't really have better versions of this movie available, which you probably do. Again, it doesn't do anything to surprise you. Like, if you're thinking, hey, I'm going to watch a movie with Kevin Hart and Woody Harrelson in it, that's what you're going to get. And that's what it is. I think it has a few moments of potential to become something more than it is, and it doesn't ever really try to get there. It's fine. It's fine. It's not awful. I didn't regret sitting there watching it. It didn't feel like a waste of time. But it just didn't do anything to surprise me, to get me to a place where I was like, that was different enough, or that was, worth more than a 3. So I'm going to give this movie a 3 out of 5 Toronto Mans. Jeez.
Nice. I have very much the same sentiments as we've basically unraveled in this review. This movie does feel overly typical, a very rinse and repeat for both Kevin Hart and Woody Harrelson. It feels like they are just playing very typical roles that they've known to, but it doesn't go any further. And to your point, the movie does try to maybe push it a little bit more, but it never really leans into anything confidently. It just kind of leans on the fact that they have Kevin Hart and Woody Harrelson and, a subpar plot. And even just the idea of how this story is, this case of mistaken identity that involves a down on your luck dude that is so typical of Kevin Hart, because he's played these characters before and he's thrown into a world he knows nothing about and learns a few things along the way, while helping his, once antagonist, now friend, kind of discover a little bit more about himself and basically turn him from antagonist to protagonist as he finds himself. Like, it feels very familiar to other movies that we've gotten in the past and not overly inventive. I will say the best part of this movie is the last 30 minutes with those action scenes, and that's probably what is saving this movie for me in a lot of cases, because if it didn't have this would probably be a 2.5 or 2 out of 5. But because of those action sequences, because of that choreography and the investment in it, I'm going to give this movie as well a 3 out of 5 men from Toronto.
You mean Toronto?
Toronto.
Yeah.
Sorry, Toronto. Sorry, from Toronto.
Don't become
right.
Woody Harrelson on me here, Justin, okay?
Yeah.
I know I'm shorter. I know I'm shorter than you, but come on.
Well, just like Kevin Hart, this review is short and sweet. And with that, we hope you enjoyed this spoiler-free review for The Man from Toronto. And if you did, make sure to subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you want to write into the show with your own thoughts on the movie, and maybe you enjoyed it more than we did, well, you can reach out to us at wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. That's wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. But if that feels like you're being tortured by a mysterious man from a foreign city, you can reach out to us on Twitter at GeekcentricYT or on Instagram at WeAreGeekcentric. Keep in mind, we also have a ton of other great episodes covering the latest in movies and TV shows and games, including our spoiler-free review for Spiderhead, another Netflix movie that is available now for you to listen and available on Netflix for you to enjoy. We also have our spoiler-free review for Disney and Pixar's Lightyear, as well as our interview with Lightyear director Angus MacLane, producer Galen Sussman, and composer Michael Giacchino. Those episodes are up right now for you to enjoy, as well as our as well as my interview with Miss Marvel directors Adil and Bilal, who directed episodes 1 and 6 of that show. And speaking of Miss Marvel, we currently have our watch clubs for both Miss Marvel and Obi-Wan well underway, with new episodes breaking down every moment, filled with speculations, dropping every Friday. This week we'll be dropping our watch club for the Obi-Wan Kenobi finale, which will be dropping later this week. Finally, we also have our weekly This Week in Geek episodes every single Wednesday, where we bring you the latest news and trailer reactions. However, it's been a very busy past couple of weeks with interviews and reviews, which we are incredibly grateful for, which means we haven't recorded one for a couple of weeks, but our last episode is still a banger, where Nate, Darcy, and I discuss all the incredible reveals from Star Wars Celebrations, as the two recant their own live experiences there and share some insights on the trailers that have yet to be released. So go give that a listen and leave a 5-star review if you don't mind. All right, man from Halifax, we're done.
All right, man from Toronto.
I guess I'm from Toronto.
Yeah, we'll say that.
Thanks for joining me for this review, man. And as we say,
love ya.
Peace.